This is my video to discuss Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. Bit late to the party, but going to put down my thoughts anyway. I've watched the fight twice, and both times I've watched it has been the US version with the commentary from Malignaggi and company. I understand there was a good bit of scandal about the UK commentary involving our good friend Carl the Cobra Frotz, but we won't cover that in this video at least. The fight was interesting in certain ways, in my opinion very predictable in other ways, but we'll come to that later. I guess breaking it down from the first round, Conor McGregor came out and he looked to be on the front foot, which I guess is what you'd expect. McGregor's the younger guy, McGregor's the bigger guy, he's the MMA fighter, the guy who's supposedly the stronger wrestler, more physical specimen of the two. And you know, it didn't surprise me that Conor was going to come out and was going to look to put it on Floyd. He talked in the pre-fight build-up about coming out to the centre of the ring and ripping Floyd's head off in 1 or 2 rounds, and you know, it very much seemed that he was looking to start and be active. We've seen a lot of fighters come out and try and lead off against Floyd. McGregor wasn't doing it to the extent of, say, a Mayweather, but perhaps that was, for me, even more puzzling. He actually, in my opinion, appeared to be trying to outbox Floyd Mayweather. Now, McGregor had a lot of advantages going into this fight, but one of them was not his boxing pedigree. He didn't have the amateur experience of Floyd Mayweather. He never had a professional fight. And, you know, Floyd's a guy who is probably considered, I mean definitely considered in my opinion, the leading boxer of his generation. So it seemed odd tactics from my perspective. And you've got to ask yourself, watching this fight back, what was Conor McGregor's actual attempt at winning this fight? Was he really looking to keep it long and out-jab and out-box Floyd and win the decision against Floyd? Because, to be honest, it kind of looks like that. And that's, you know, he sets that tone from the early rounds, the first 3 rounds. And of course, he's looking to land something to take Floyd Mayweather out. But at the same time, he's not necessarily going out there looking to take Floyd's head off with a single punch. You see Conor trying to measure Floyd, trying to jab Floyd and trying to box Floyd. And, yeah, for me, that was a questionable tactic. It was never a tactic that was likely to come into fruition. But Conor starts out, and to be fair, he probably does win the first 3 rounds. There's a lot of debate in terms of the McGregor jab and whether that's a weapon or not. My opinion was that Floyd was exceptionally low volume in the first 3 rounds, and therefore the McGregor jab probably did win Conor the first 3 rounds. But it wasn't really the best jab you're going to see. It was more of a case that because Floyd was so low volume and because Conor McGregor was looking to put a lot of work out there, the fact that he was utilising that jab and getting his offence off probably meant that you'd edge the rounds to him, because the rounds were so low volume from Floyd's perspective, you'd be inclined just to side with Conor in those early rounds based on volume alone. But McGregor was getting that jab going. I've heard some people saying that the jab was a real good weapon. I wasn't so sure. I mean, there are a few highlight jabs McGregor did land throughout the course of the fight, and I would say that McGregor did have some moments. I think in the first round he lands an uppercut on Floyd, which you don't expect to see. You do see him landing a few jabs, but on the whole, I actually didn't really like the construction of McGregor's jab. I thought that in some ways his jab reminded me of like a David Price type figure, the British heavyweight. He seemed to be standing back, standing quite upright, almost leaning back, and you know, maybe he was scared of overcommitting behind the jab, but he was standing back on his, you know, very upright, and he was kind of, he held his lead jab hand out, so he's a southpaw, so I guess he's like this, he's very upright, and he just kind of, you know, extends it. I don't want to say it was like a pouring jab, like, you know, like trying to pour away, but he didn't fully commit to it, and his stance was sort of very upright and very leaning back when he was throwing it. And that was a comment that Malignaggi made in an interview I saw, which is that McGregor maybe has a bit of power, but he's not able to utilise that power in boxing because the way he moves and the way he transitions his weight when he punches is just incorrect. And I can certainly see that through his jab. You know, there was no force behind the jab for me. He was throwing the jab, there was some accuracy, some inaccuracy, but it just seemed that he was throwing it from maybe the wrong position. He was throwing it without fully committing to it, and yeah, it probably did pick him up the first 3 rounds. But Floyd really turned it on in round 4, and I think Floyd really went through the gears slowly in this fight. The first 3 rounds very much in first gear. Rounds 4 to 6, certainly 4 and 5, probably Floyd Mayweather fans rounds, but you could say that he was moving up into second gear. He was just starting to go through the motions. Round 6 onwards, probably moving into third gear, you see Floyd start to win rounds in the competitive but dominant fashion, and then rounds 9 and 10 is Floyd really putting the pedal to the metal and trying to put some hurt on Conor McGregor there, for my money. But yeah, Floyd starts coming into it in round 4. He said after the fight that he'd noticed in Conor's MMA fights that Conor starts very, very strong. He's very dangerous early on, but he's got a propensity for his stamina to drop later on in the fights. And obviously, boxing over 12 rounds is a substantially longer fight than an MMA fight over 5. So Floyd said really he wanted to let McGregor get his work off, expend a lot of energy, take the sting out of McGregor before starting to come into the fight. And that's exactly what he did in the ring. Very sensible tactics. He was going up against a bigger guy. I'd have liked to have seen Floyd try and implement a bit more work to the body. I didn't see the Floyd Mayweather jab to the body as effectively in this fight as I've seen in other fights, and I think Floyd Senior made some comments relating to that as well. So I'd have liked to have seen Floyd work the body a bit more, considering that was his tactic. But nevertheless, it worked, and it worked very effectively. Whilst Conor was the output puncher in the early rounds of this fight, and whilst Conor was landing some punches, at no point did you ever see Floyd, in my opinion, hurt, wobbled, or really looking like he was in any way struggling in the fight. It seemed to me a deliberate tactic that Floyd would let Conor take the early rounds, would let Conor push the pace, and he would continue making Conor work during those rounds. He wasn't making it easy for Conor. So whilst Conor was the output fighter, and whilst Conor looked to put it on Floyd in those early rounds, Floyd was still coming forward. You see good spells in the fight where Floyd puts his hand up and just sort of borrows forward for me. And that was him trying to make Conor McGregor, the less experienced guy, work. It was him trying to make Conor keep his punch output high. And it was him starting to sap the energy of Conor McGregor from the early rounds for me. When Floyd started coming into the fight, the lack of defence from Conor McGregor was immediately obvious. There's been a lot of chatter online that Conor McGregor was a better boxer than people expected him to be. And potentially, you could say that offensively, he did certain things well in there for a guy who hadn't had a pro fight before. Defensively, to my uneducated eye, he looked every ounce of the debut novice that he was. If you look at the punches that Floyd lands on Conor McGregor, particularly power punches, and I think it's noteworthy that Floyd landed over 50% of his power punches, but if you look at the punches, the way Floyd is hitting Conor, you don't tend to see a lot of connections like that in top level boxing. In elite level boxing, in world title fights, it's very rare you see that volume of punches land quite as flush. Now, Floyd has been in many fights before where he's enjoyed a very, very high power punch connect ratio. But typically, when he's fighting a class opponent, you will see punches half taken on the gloves. You will see people half ride punches. So Floyd may connect cleanly, but maybe they're leaning away from the punch, maybe they're coming into the punch, and it means the full force of the punches are not absorbed purely by the opponent's chin. But in this fight, Conor McGregor, defensively, in my opinion, was reminiscent of one of those punching bags shaped like a human head. You know the ones I mean, where they're standing upright just with a head and shoulders on them. The punches that Floyd was landing so clean and were landing so crisp on Conor McGregor. And whilst Floyd is a world-class counterpuncher, an elite boxer, an elite technician, even in Floyd's fights, it was rare to see him landing that cleanly, that regularly. And I'm not talking about the connect percentage. I'm talking about punches landing straight on McGregor's chin, where McGregor's hands are nowhere near forming a guard, where McGregor is straight upright in the air with his chin in the air, where McGregor's got absolutely no head movement, and when McGregor makes no effort whatsoever to try and ride the punch or try and, you know, parry it or change the range with which he's absorbing the punch. You are literally seeing Floyd Mayweather, particularly with that lead right hand cross he uses so well, you are literally seeing Floyd Mayweather tee off on Conor McGregor. And the amount of punches McGregor has absorbed without any awareness defensively whatsoever was concerning for me. And whilst Floyd isn't the biggest puncher in the world, whilst Floyd is a smaller man than Conor McGregor, definitely, those punches were always going to start to take a toll. You know, Floyd's still got a knockout percentage above 50%, let's not forget that. Floyd, despite the fact he's no heavyweight puncher, Floyd is still a guy who has made a career out of hitting things, let's not forget that. So, you know, that was for me when the writing was on the wall. Conor made it competitive in the middle rounds. Floyd was still looking to come forward, and I guess there were spells in the fight where both men were looking to come forward, and you know, it became a bit scrappy, it became a bit messy. Floyd, clearly for me, not looking to put on a classic Floyd Mayweather performance. If he'd have fought an elite level boxer, I expect we'd have seen a vintage Floyd performance where he's more on the back foot, when he's more trying to use his legs, when he's more trying to counterpunch. Here he was looking to make a statement. Whether it was because of his last fight, whether it was because he viewed Conor McGregor as easy work, or whether it was because he was just so desperate to get a KO, I don't know. But this wasn't a classic Floyd Mayweather performance. You don't really see Floyd on the front foot, looking to close down range, looking to cut down the ring, looking to put power punches together in the same fashion as this in many of his fights. And you know, a lot of people who think Floyd Mayweather looked poor, I am half of the mind. Of course, he's not the same Floyd Mayweather he used to be. He's 40 years old and he's been out of the ring for 2 years, etc. But I'm half of the mind that the reason that he didn't look like a vintage Floyd Mayweather is actually because he didn't fight like vintage Floyd Mayweather, and he didn't use some of the techniques and some of the approaches to boxing that have seen him at his most successful, when he's able to control fights on the back foot and make the opponent chase him. So yeah, I mean, Conor got some work off in the middle rounds. Conor landed some punches of note. For me, the middle rounds are probably with Floyd. So by the halfway point of the fight, by 6 rounds, probably on a scorecard I'd have it about even. From there on, it was Floyd Mayweather territory for me. And by the time we get to round 9, I know Conor said it's an early stoppage. I was actually half thinking the referee should jump in round 9.